Hey there, everybody. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, whatever time it is for you. Welcome to week one. For our standard track, we're going to be working on a tune called Michigan from one of my favorite duos, the Milk Carton Kids. If you haven't got a chance to yet, check out those videos I posted on the landing page. Just a phenomenal group, and I put a little surprise in there. Hour-long concert if you're feeling the music. I know I was pretty obsessed with this group when I first heard them, so I was definitely digging in the archives and finding good video of them. So anyway, yeah, thank you guys for participating and supporting this month and jumping in and learning ukulele with me. Remember, this is a pre-recorded class, so try and use the media to its, or the format to its best abilities. So, watching it when you have time in your schedule, and then also replaying the video and skipping parts that are not relevant, rewinding parts that are. If you need a little bit more time to work with something, then for sure use that pause and rewind button as much as you want. Yeah, so, I think the big thing for this tune is going to be a lot of progressions in terms of, the actual number of them. But really, these chords should be manageable, nothing that we haven't seen before and that we can't handle in this group. And then simple rhythm. And if you're working on the intermediate part, the intro, we're going to be going through the melody. Why don't we start with some of the left-hand shapes we're going to need to know how to play. Let's see if I can find it here. Yeah, right here. So if we're looking at this progression together, some of these chord shapes, E minor, we might need a little bit of work in terms of polishing that up. G chord we've seen before, C of course. Other chord we need is a D in this tune, and that's really it. E minor, G, C, and D. Those are the chords that are going to be showing up. So let's go over just those chord shapes, just in case you haven't worked this E minor before. This is going to be the most challenging because it is out of position. That's one of the things you'll notice when working through this. Just let me go through this one time real quick so I can get this in focus. So yeah, you'll notice that one of the characteristics of this E minor chord is, if you look, my pointer finger is actually not on the first fret where it normally is. It's actually on the second. So the big thing about this chord is that you're going to want to jump position. See how my thumb, if it's marked right here on that second fret, when I move, see how it slides kind of to this first position. So the key here is getting a little bit of movement up and down the neck. So make sure you're really marking that shift as you move between these chord shapes. So that E minor, I always visualize it more like a stair step coming up from the bottom string, and then I go up a string, over a fret, up a string, and over a fret. It's pretty easy to find. Other chords, pretty straightforward. G chord, a C chord, and then a D chord. One nice option that I found for this D that sounds really good in this tune is a modification of a D. Let's see, D, F, A. Yeah, it's really a modification of this A note that happens. Usually you play this chord 2, 2, 2, 0. But I really like the way that this chord sounds when you put just the middle two notes of that chord and leave the G string open. So that can be an option for you. Obviously, it's a little easier of a chord to hold down, but for me, I like to, I also like to kind of play with that voicing with the open G note up there, which sounds really good to me. That's sus4. So that can be your version of D if you would like as well. Otherwise, the chord shape is 2, 2, 2, and 0. Just stacking those fingers right on top of each other. So let's go through some whole note exercises, just moving between those chord shapes. We'll go E minor first. 1, 2, ready, and 3, and G. And let's go to C, and let's play D. So remember, this is where you want to start every one of your practices this week. G, and then C, and then to D. Just moving through the left-hand shapes, getting familiar with them, really feeling how they move in between each other. And then C, and then to D, and then finish E minor. So now we want to start to arrange and assemble our progression. We'll get a little visual here. And remember, this is something that you want to get down into your fingers and hands and really not use this visual reference up here kind of as soon as you can. As soon as you can get away from having to look at these pictures, make sure you do it. So just a couple reminders, these little symbols here are repeats. And so this progression here, E minor, G, C, C, E minor, D, C, C. You can see that you repeat this one once, and then what's in the parentheses here is actually our first ending, right? So E minor, G, C, C, E minor, D, C, C, and then we repeat E minor, G, C, C, E minor, D, G, and G. That's going to be our intro, and I think that's where we'll start for week 1. Everybody kind of flowing through that chord progression and making sure that you know how it sounds, how it moves, and also how it starts to feel, you know, that routine of your left hand moving in between those chord shapes. So let's start there. We'll do it with a visual reference first, and then we'll see if we can get up close on the hands. 1, 2, ready, E minor. And then G. And then C. And then C again. And then E minor. And then D. And then C for 2 measures. And then we repeat that intro. Remember, when we get to the tail end of this, that's when we're going to jump to our second ending. And then we go E minor. And then D. And we end. Second ending. 2 measures of G before you drop into the next progression. Let's see if we can try that rotation again. And, you know, you can use some visual reference if you have that sheet printed out, and then you watch the hands move. Remember, my big thing is these transfers, right? See how that switch? For me, getting these switches down, like how they transform, is one of the most important things that I can do. I noticed that what actually drags me into that first position is the middle finger moving from 3 to 2. So that could be your pivot point. You can move this 3rd fret E string down a string and over. And as I land there, then I'm creating the rest of that triangle shape with my hands. So E minor to G, right? And then we move to C. That's an easy transition, ring finger down. And then we go E minor again. See that little shift there from when I'm in the C chord? Middle finger takes the place of that 3rd fret. See? Middle finger right there. Or you can think, put the pointer finger down on 2 and then build the chord shape from there, right? And then as I switch into D, I like to use commonalities, like my pointer finger's already on the 2nd fret, and that could be a good starting point. So I take that pointer finger that's there, and I hop it all the way to the top string. So I take that E minor, hop it to the top string, and then just stack my fingers underneath. Now, I pointed this out a lot in the past before, but make sure that when you're in these tighter chord positions and chord shapes, that you have the right grip on the ukulele. A lot of times when, you know, if your D chord, see how my fingers are at this diagonal, you know, supporting the headstock here with my hand, and then my fingers have a nice diagonal line to the fret wires. As I rotate into a more common position that people always start out in, sort of this more classical guitar grip, remember, my fingers get a little bit wider. They start to fight for room, and see how my pointer finger's on top of the fret wire. So is my ring, and the only one that has room is that middle finger. Now, as I rotate, see, those fingers can stack a little bit better on top of each other. So make sure you're paying attention to your grip, especially if you're feeling like, you know, you're fighting for room on that fret with those fingers. Yeah, so let's try the rotation now. Let's see if we can go through that progression, and I won't put it up on the screen. You can just make sure you have that visual reference, but you can see how the hands move. 1, 2, whole notes. Here we go. Intro. Bum, ba-da-dum, ba-da-dum, and bum, 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 ba-dee-dum-dum-dum. Dum bum 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 dum dum. Repeat. Bum bum ba da dum da da dum. Bum 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 dum 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 dum. Beam beam dum dum. Second ending to G for 2 measures. So that's your intro progression. And remember, if you're working on the intermediate part, you'll see that we're actually playing that melodic line I was singing. Just wanted to start getting into your ears. And so one of the things that I would suggest is, depending on which arrangement you're working on, say you're working on the beginner part, which means that you're playing the chords, you can always open the intermediate arrangement, the intermediate sound slice, and be playing that while you hear that melodic line going on. And so you can practice moving those chords through and hearing how that melody interacts with that backdrop of the chord progression, and vice versa. If you're working on the intermediate part, you can always open the beginner slice, use it as an accompaniment for you while you work on that melodic line. Yeah, let's move into the next progressions here. The verse of the tune, I want you to see that, it's really just moving back and forth between these chords, C and G, and then we go into the tail of that verse before we move into the bridge and the chorus. So C and G back and forth, pretty self-explanatory. The one thing I wanted to point out is this little moment here, E minor and D. Remember, when I see a slash between two chords like that, that measure is going to be shared. E minor for 2 beats, D for 2 beats. So that progression, C, C, E minor, half of the measure, D, half the measure, and then to C, that completes that little 4 measure set there. Cool. So let's run through this and let's go whole notes. I'll keep this picture up there. 1, 2, 3, 4. The clouds move over Pontiac skies. And you repeat. Silent thunder matches mine. 2, 3. And now we go to, and I know this feeling. Remember, 2 beats E minor from long ago. 2, 3, 4. Wondering, was it lost to D? Now I know. And that takes us into the bridge. When she calls. So remember that verse progression, really, the only thing that's really a little surprise there is the E minor to D for 2 beats, and then we move to C. Cool. So let's see if we can just sight read it from that verse. We'll move into the bridge. We'll move into the chorus. All just sight reading. And then we'll talk a little bit about that chorus since we got the repeats with the number times 5 after it. So 1, 2, ready, verse. Clouds move over Pontiac skies, and they're silently for 1 matches mine. 2, 3, 4. And then C. I know this feeling from long ago. 2, 3, 4. Wondering, was it gone? But now I know. 2, 3, 4. Let's go to the bridge. When she calls, don't send her my way. 3, 4. 1, 2, and repeat. It hurts, you'll know it's the right thing. And chorus. Chickens in the rear view now. 3, 4. And so this chorus here, really it's just a repeat, right? So feel this progression. Make sure you can move through that. I always like to think of it as like a dance routine and try to connect all those steps. So don't think of it just as chord to chord to chord, using visual reference, moving between those blocks. It's more like see all 4 of those chords in that measure as one sentence. See if you can feel that harmonic statement and then just repeat the whole phrase again. And in this case, we're going to be repeating it 5 times, right? So 5 times through, and then we end it with a G chord and a D chord. So again, a lot of progressions, a lot in terms of number, definitely a lot of progressions, but I want you to see that a lot of them have a very, very similar feel, right? Like how I started to visualize this was a lot of times this little move here, this C for 2 measures, see how it happens quite a bit in the tune? That really is sort of that suspension. You feel movement between these 2 chords and then you suspend yourself on that C chord for a little bit. Right? So if I'm playing the bridge, it sounds like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, and then here you hang on that chord. See how it kind of opens up there? So that moment, you know, I kind of memorize that by feel and just make sure I'm plugging it in into most places. If you think in that way, then really what you need to memorize are these tails. And then this verse is, you know, so simple that I think it's pretty straightforward. Otherwise, you know, you're really playing a chord to a chord and then kind of hanging on that C, chord to a chord, hanging on that C, right? That's how a lot of this tune, I anyway, you know, organize a lot of this tune in my head. All right, so that's it for the chord progression. Remember, getting those down without using visual reference is sort of our first goal through the week. So make sure you're doing lots of rotations, whole notes moving through those, you know, looking at your hands, trying to find connectivity between those transformations, you know, like commonalities, finger stays on this string, or maybe it's pivot points, like you're going to one point on the new chord first and then building the chord from there. There's a lot of different strategies for doing that we talk about a lot in class. So let me know if you have any questions via Slack feed, or you can shoot me an email and I'll see if I can help out in any way with that. So yeah, let's talk rhythm. That's where we should go next. So the rhythm that I think we wanna look at is, we're gonna just look at the beginner rhythm for now. This is really what I had mapped out here, just right there. So one of the things I want to point out is this big gap right here. This big gap, I think, is one of the things that we really want to pay attention to in this moment. For now, we'll just try and get the sound of it. So I'll clap it once and then we'll see if we can strum it after that. Actually, a few rotations of clapping. Yeah, so we'll go 1, 2, 1, 2. Sounds like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2. So pay attention to how the rhythm sounds. Long space, shorter, short, short, and then long space. Bop, 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 bop. So when we take it to the ukulele, I don't want you to think too much about direction. Just try and make the sound. 2, ready, 2. So I think our first reaction would be to kind of move this way. It'd be 1, 2. Now, do you see how after that first beat I kind of froze there? It's like 1, and then I froze, and I, you know, felt that long space, and then I kind of moved up when I was ready to hit the next one. 1, freezing here. Now, I'm just going to suggest a little bit of a different way to move. If we felt this space, the one in between beats 1 and 2, and we sort of felt this second beat, let's see, for now, what we'll do is we'll actually play it. So instead of not playing it, we'll just play it, just to see how that feels and looks and moves and sounds. 1, 2, sounds like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, and. Now, if I'm moving this way, if I want to create that big half note of space on beat 1, what I would do is try to play that second beat without touching the string. So I'd go 1, miss on 2, 3, 4, and. What you'll find is if you move this way, then it kind of keeps time for you. You know exactly when that third beat should hit. Now, when I'm playing that, obviously I'm not making that exaggerated of a movement, but you'll find almost always when you're watching people with more time, people who've been playing the instrument for longer, there's really no stoppage in movement a lot of the times. Like, you'll find that there's always a subtle sort of pulse going on, and that's really just giving reference to this beat, right? It's like movement through this beat, but instead of actually engaging or touching with the strings, we're just going to move through the strings but not touch it. You know, and really, if you want to expand on this concept a little, really our hands are always doing this, aren't they? Right? In between these two beats, I can't really play 2 downs in a row without moving up anyway. And so I always like to think of strumming as more of a subtractive process rather than additive. A lot of times people tell you, oh, do a down and then do another down and then do a down and then do an up. But really, when you think about it, it's more about when. Like, when am I playing? 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, right? If you think in that way and move in that way, then your strumming is going to be a lot more intuitive, a lot more natural. So that's the rhythm that we want to work on. So try and think about always starting your practices the same way, right? Rotations with the rhythm without the chords, whole notes with the chords moving through them. And then if you try to synthesize those two things, remember, don't get straight into the repertoire right away. You can just move between the 4 chords that are present in the song, just starting to run a little bit of practice. Yeah, we'll just give an example. We'll see if we can start just the rhythm. 1, 2, ready, E minor. 2. So there's the rhythm, moving through the strings on beat 2, playing on 3, 4 ands. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1. Just a little reference. See how I just bob that hand across the strings. Right? It doesn't have to be big, doesn't have to be exaggerated. Yeah? Let's say maybe we already warmed up with our whole note exercises, so now we'll go to some of these chords. E minor. And remember, just think long durations. Yeah, feel your movement through them. Go to a G. And now let's go to D. And now let's try C. Let's end on E minor. See that little micro shift. Remember when I'm at the C chord, little shift here into that second position. So my pointer finger's in the right spot. So now let's see if we can combine them. And remember, if this is feeling a little bit too rushed for you, remember you can spend more time. I always like to think like pull what you can from class in terms of, you know, how we sequence things. Like what order did we go in? How did we start? And what did we add if we wanted to add more difficulty? And then just try and expand all of those elements, you know, in your own practice. Spend longer in each step in the sequence, and you'll really build towards the eventual end goal. That being said, just for sake of time, we'll just jump ahead and see if we can start to synthesize these two. Right hand interacting with left hand chord progressions. So we'll bring that visual back up for a second here. Yeah, and let's see if we can start maybe with, oops, that's not what I wanted to do. I want to do it here. We'll see if we can start with the strum pattern and that intro, yeah? Remember, repeat, first ending is C, second ending is G. Now 1, 2, let's start with just the rhythm. Sounds like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1. Now that we got that rhythm going, let's try the progression. Go ahead and look over it. E minor to G to C to C. E minor to D to C to C. Repeat those and G. 1, 2, ready, intro. Bum, bum, bum. G, ba da dum, ba da dum. Dun dun dun, ba dun dun, ba dun dun. And repeat the whole intro. Bum, ba da dum, C, ba da dum. E minor, dun, ba da dum. Second ending to G. All right, let's try to play through this. C. Clouds move over Pontiac skies. Silent thunder matches mine. There's that repeat. And now we go out the bracket C. And I know this feeling. E minor to D from long ago. Wondering, was it gone? But now I know. Into the bridge. When she calls, don't send her my way. When it hurts, repeat, you'll know it's the right thing. Let's try that chorus 5 times through. Chickens in the rear view now. Keep your hands where I can see you. You took the words right out my mouth when you knew that I would need a what am I supposed to do now? There's the fifth one, and we end with G. Without you, without to D, and back to E minor. So there you go. There you go. The song is really just a cycle of, you know, all of those parts that we went through. So if we look at kind of the overview and the map here, that intro, oh, that's not what we want it to look like. Oh, there we go. So if we look over the kind of overview, we see intro here, which is those, you know, that thing at the top there. And then we go into a verse, go into a bridge, we go into a chorus, and then really we're just repeating ourselves. Intro, verse, bridge, chorus right through here. And then we end with an intro. So structure-wise, just remember, it's pretty straightforward. It's really just, I think the big work for us this week is really going to be getting these chord progressions memorized, getting that rhythm a lot more automatic in our hands. And then, yeah, next week we'll start to talk about the few variations that are in this tune. And remember, really try and think about repetition with the skills that your right and left hand are doing for the majority of the song. I mean, really, there's only a few changes. And since the intro picking, we left to the intermediate arrangement, we also just kept the rhythm pretty much the same. There's one or two things that are different in the intermediate, but just know that if you're working on the beginner part, that's a nice stepping stone towards learning the intermediate part, because it's not much different in terms of the bulk of the song. It's really happening in the intro and maybe one or two little endings for progressions. So that's about it. I am going to be gone for 2 weeks, folks. I did want to mention that, you know, I'm going to try my best to really be present with my family and stuff like that. So I won't be, you know, at the email and at the Slack feed as consistently as I normally am. So if you do send something out question-wise, just know it might take me a second to get back to you, but I will carve out a little bit of time to see if I can, you know, stay up to date with what's going on. So please let me know if you have any questions. Yeah, really looking forward to seeing where you guys can take this tune. And yeah, thanks again for joining us for UKLab. Have a great couple weeks, and we will see you in person on the 15th. Take care. Bye-bye.